As the scriptures often do, right in the midst of something wonderful or a beautiful victory or a good act on the part of somebody, the scriptures show the sin and the issues and the troubling things that take place. And so the Bible is very realistic. It's not a fairy tale. If there's a problem, the Bible identifies it. If there's a godly person who sins, that sin is often shown. We don't have any perfect people. And so we have here in chapter 6 the great victory at Jericho, one of the most miraculous, if not the most miraculous military victory in history. And it's a wonderful thing. But we come to chapter 7 and we have a problem. We have a defeat at the hands of a small town, relatively small town called Ai, because of sin. So let's pick up the story a little bit. In verse 1, the sons of Israel acted unfaithfully in regard to the things under the ban. For Achan, I guess he's from the tribe of Judah, took some of the things under the ban, therefore the anger of the Lord burned against Israel. And so when the people go to spy out the land of Ai, they didn't think they needed very many people to conquer Ai. It was a small town. Verse 4, they were just going to take about 3,000 in their army. But when they went up against Ai, 36 men, verse 5, were killed. As far as we know, nobody died at Jericho, but 36 men are killed in battle at little Ai. And therefore, verse 5, their hearts melted because of this defeat. Now, the people of the land of Canaan, their hearts had melted. We saw that numerous times in chapter 2 and in chapter 5. But now it's Israel's turn for their hearts to melt, because now they're in great fear. How are we going to defeat all these bigger places, these bigger nations, when we can't defeat this relatively small town? And the people of the land will hear about our defeat at the hands of Ai, and they'll gain courage, and they will figure they can beat us in battle, and we're going to be destroyed. So they're fearful. Their hearts have melted away. Well, the problem is, and they didn't seem to realize this, the problem is that Israel, verse 11, had sinned. We find before that Joshua goes before the Lord, verses 6 to 9. He cries out to the Lord, what's going on here? Why were we defeated? What are we going to do about this? Verse 10, I think, is instructive. The Lord said to Joshua, rise up. Why is it that you've fallen on your face? Israel has sinned. I find this interesting because Joshua's praying and he's crying out to the Lord. And that seems to be almost always a very good thing. But folks, there's a time to pray and there's a time to act. And God says, it's enough praying now. Get up and act. Something has to be done because Israel has sinned. Now, Joshua does not know what this sin is. Of course, God does. And the sin is that a man by the name of Achan, as we've already seen up in verse 1, has stolen some of the goods. And Joshua does not know who this is. And these are things under the ban, things that God told them not to take. And so Joshua goes through a process of elimination to decide who it was that took the property. And ultimately, we find out that it was none other than Achan. Verse 19, he says to Achan, my son, I implore you, give glory to the Lord, the God of Israel, and give praise to him, and tell me now what you've done. Do not hide it from me. And Achan answered Joshua and said, truly I have sinned against the Lord and the God of Israel, and this is what I did. And he had taken, verse 21, a mantle, a beautiful mantle, 200 shekels of silver, a bar of gold, and he covered them and hid them in his tent, and so forth. And so when this was found out, then they took Achan and his family and all of his stuff, and they stoned them and burnt everything down. And Joshua says, why have you troubled us? And then they stoned him. Now, there are a couple things here that sometimes trouble people. Why did all of Israel have to go through these difficult times for Achan's sin? And why was his family put to death when Achan was the one who sinned? And I think the answer might be this. When he hid the stuff in his tent, surely his family knew this. He couldn't hide it from them. So they were complicit in his sin. And most likely the people of Israel were too, at least some of them were, because how do you carry all this stuff out, hide it, and nobody knows about it? So some people knew, and they didn't want to squeal on him. They covered it up. And so the Lord ultimately demonstrated who this was. So I don't think they were totally innocent here, and Israel suffered as a result of that. We do find Achan confesses his sin, he repents, but he also suffers the consequence of disobeying God and troubling Israel.